class. It's the next door over here. This is English. What can you do? Brazil. Okay, so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and 58. Yeah, and then before Hong Kong, I was working the interior design and construction.
Okay, thank you, Yisrael from Hong Kong. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Steve from Malaysia.
Steve from Malaysia, you got a nice new kippah. Yeah, it's a special one.
So you will fly away.
Okay, please.
My name is Rabbi. I was born in Germany, but the most of my life I lived in the Netherlands. Now, since more than 3 years, I am in Israel.
Yafeh, Baruch Hashem. Okay.
Shalom, I'm Michael Arie. I'm 29 years old. I'm born in Amsterdam, and now I live 1 year and 4 months in Israel.
But who's counting? But who's counting? Yafeh.
He counts the Omer and his.
Yeah, that's it. The days in Israel. That's what we should count.
1 year, 4 months, 2 years.
We said the days of redemption. Days of redemption, right? Go ahead, Gabby.
Gabriel from Colombia, and I'm 18. I've been in Israel for a year and 4 months. A year and 4 months.
Also, yeah, okay.
My name is Aaron. I'm from China. I'm 33.
How much? 33?
33.
Yeah.
I'm here much longer, many years already.
How many years?
7 years.
7 years in Israel?
7.5 years.
7.5 years in Israel. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Your name, where you from? The short version.
Hi. My name is Benjamin Moshe Ben Abraham. I live in Jerusalem 6 years. I'm converted in Sweden, where I live part of my life. I'm 83 years old.
83. I know, with us.
82, 4 months, 2 weeks, 1 day.
But who's counting? Great.
We come there.
Hananel, welcome back. Good to see you. Just introduce yourself, where you're from, how old you are.
I'm from here. I'm from India.
And how old are you?
26.
20?
27.
27. Okay, who's counting? Hopefully your mother's counting. I don't know. 27. Very nice. Okay, so the fact that we could go around the room, I think we covered all the continents. Right?
Yeah.
Not South Africa, not the South Pole, but we have from Africa, Asia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. We have the Far East, and I'm from the West Indies. Right. So this is a miracle that we're here in Jerusalem to study Torah together. It's quite a miracle. So this is connected to the days that we're introducing now. We have 3 days to introduce Yom HaAtzma'ut, the days of independence, and really what we're celebrating, it's called the Independence Days. We're celebrating the independence of the state. We're going to talk about the state, but really we have to widen the perspective and realize that what we're celebrating is not only the political mechanism, the structure that was created called the State of Israel, but we're really celebrating the ingathering of the exiles and so much more of the recent history of the Jewish people, which are so remarkable that many, many great rabbis have designated the day of HaEyar as a festival to celebrate and to thank Hashem for all the amazing miracles. Some of them having to do with the state of Israel, and some of them had to do with the ingathering of the exiles, and many other miracles which we're going to talk about. And the day in which every day we say, thank you Hashem for making the sunshine every Every day we're happy to be alive. We thank Him that we can open our eyes and see, walk upright, and there's so much to be thankful for. But on the larger scale, the larger perspective, there are miracles that we sometimes don't pay attention to. One of my teachers, Rabbi Chaim Druckmann, Zichrono Livracha, in commentary, we say, Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Hashem Et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholmim. It's the Shir HaMa'alot. Many people say it before Birkat HaMazon. Psalm, what is it? 100 and can't remember the number. One of the Shir HaMa'alot. It's about 120.
Is the one that we say also in Arvit?
Not usually in Arvit. No, that's Shir La Ma'alot. There's 15 of them that start ascent. Ma'alot. Stairs, essentially. There were stairs in the temple, and instruments and sing these songs. And there's 15 of them, one for each one of the stairs. And so one of them we recite a few of them we recite regularly part of the services. But the one I'm referring to now is the one that speaks about when Hashem returns to Zion. Shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, the captives of Zion, those who were captured from Zion, from Yerushalayim, from Israel. And Shuv Hashem, God's going to return the captives. So the Tehillim says, Hayinu kecholmim. We were like. So what does that mean? We were like dreamers. When God returns the captives to Zion, it's beautiful to be true. It's like a dream come true. Sometimes we say in English. So Rav Druckmann said a different commentary. He said, you know what it's like? Sometimes you're in class. You can imagine what that's like. And the teacher's going on and on. He's boring. You can't pay attention. It's like a math class, not my class, of course. You're not talking about that. Like some boring lecture in university. I'm thinking about. And so your mind wanders. We call that sometimes that you're like dreaming, right? You're daydreaming. Yeah, you're like thinking about other things. And you're not paying attention to class. And he said, this is his interpretation. What it means we were like dreamers. Sometimes we cannot notice what's going on around us. Like the guy in class who just, his mind is not there. He's not noticing what the teacher's saying. And he's just in his own world. He's sort of daydreaming and disassociating, if you will, from his surroundings, from what's going on. And he says, unfortunately, there's too many people who they just are busy with their daily lives. We are all busy with our daily lives, and we need to, make a buck, and we need to eat, and we need to do our laundry, and we need to XYZ, whatever we're busy with, travel, and we don't notice what's going on. It's like we're not paying attention to the bigger picture. The bigger picture is we live in a time of amazing miracles, of amazing upheaval, of changes, of redemption for the Jewish people. And that's something that we shouldn't be like dreamers. God could come and split the sea, and we'd say, oh, my nail cracked. You could be so busy with so many things and not even notice that we're living in tremendous fulfillment of prophecies on left and right. And Yom HaAtzma'ut is the day designated to wake up from our not noticing, our just not paying attention, being so busy with our lives that, okay, well, I need to pay taxes to the government again. Oh no, I need to, they didn't clean up the garbage collectors didn't come today. Whenever we mention the government, many times we complain and say, oh no, this bureaucracy and that, and they're doing this and that. And it's all true, of course, yes. But it's sleeping. It's sleeping, it's dreaming, it's like daydreaming. It's like you're not noticing what's going on. What's really going on is that we have a Jewish state for the first time in thousands of years. That we are sovereign over our country. It's unbelievable that we're gathered exiles from Asia and Africa and America and Europe. We're sitting here in Jerusalem studying Torah. This is just, it's something that we have to stop and notice and celebrate, and that's what Yom HaAtzma'ut is for. So we're going to be discussing this, the elements of Yom HaAtzma'ut and how we, our attitude should be towards it. For now's the time, tis the season, as they say, to make it easier on me. I have a text. It's always easier to teach when you have a text, and you can always refer back to it as well, even if you don't have a pen or a pencil, you didn't bring one, and you're not taking notes. You have a lot of what we're going to be discussing here. The book I'm using is, of course, Pninei Halacha from Rabbi Eliezer Melabed. We used it before. And in this book called Zmanim, which literally means times, it includes the laws of minor holidays and annual observances, including the laws of Rosh Chodesh, Sfirat HaOmer, Yom HaAtzma'ut, fast days, the 3 weeks, Chanukah and Purim. So obviously we're going to focus in on Yom HaAtzma'ut. Before we get started, I want to say just a few things. That's going to be on page 71. So there's a few books on the table, and there might not be enough for everybody, but I want to mention again, as I mentioned before many times, you should know that the Pninei Halacha is online, accessible, for free. Every word of every book that he puts out, he makes it free. He wants to spread Torah, and it's a wonderful thing, including, so you can find it in this app or that app or on the website. We're going to be starting on page 71 in just a moment. But before we do, I want to start on page 70, which talks about the Omer period, because my introduction about this period of the Omer, that it's like one, according to the Ramban, it's one long. I don't think we have any more. I looked. Yeah, I think they're all taken. If you have one at home, you can bring it in, and tomorrow we'll be using it for the next few days. The Omer period is not only about celebration. The way I described it fits in very well with the new days of celebration. It's intermediate days, the one long celebration of redemption from Pesach to Shavuot. So in that context, Yom HaAtzma'ut and Yom Yerushalayim make a lot of sense. However, my presentation should probably have gotten you thinking, because many people present the Omer period a little differently. And I don't want to ignore that, of course, and they're both true. But I think that I purposefully started the way I did, because we're getting closer to this original meaning of this period between Pesach and Shavuot being a period of celebration. As I said, 2 new holidays, 2 new festivals. But what's the other side of the coin? The other side of the coin is that the period of the Omer is traditionally associated with some elements of mourning. Why? Why elements of mourning? It's the springtime. We came out of Egypt. We're going to accept the Torah. Not 7 days, 7 weeks, and then we're going to have another holiday. Why do we stick in mourning all of a sudden? It's not a time of destruction of the temple. That's later on in the summer. Nothing what bad happened during this period. This is a period of celebration. So who can tell me?
Maybe something to do with the word itself. When you're praying the Omer, it's just maybe you move something in the world of Sephirah.
It's true, but even that doesn't have to necessarily be sad. Even if you say, okay, we need to work on ourselves for the period of development from coming out of Egypt until we're ready to receive the Torah, we have to improve ourselves, and we have to, using the Kabbalistic system, 7 lower sefirot, 7 weeks, 7 days in each week, 7 times 7. Each day is like another rung on the ladder. We're building ourselves up. But why should that be sad? That's a process, but it's not sad. What do you?
23,000.
The Rabbi Akiva's students.
Yeah, is that what you were going to say also, Micha? Yeah, the Talmud says that at one period in history there was tragedy, rebellions against the Roman Empire, the Bar Kokhba revolt. Rabbi Akiva was active at the time, a big follower, a big promoter of. We know him as Shimon Bar Kokhba. Other rabbis called him Shimon Bar Koziva because his rebellion didn't really work. We're talking about 135 CE. After the destruction in year 70, about 60 years later, the Jewish people gave it another go. They tried to throw off the yoke of the Roman Empire, and we all know the end, that it was unsuccessful. They had some success. They minted some coins. We find them. It's unbelievable till today. They thought that they were restarting the Jewish sovereignty. And they did for a couple of years, but ultimately the rebellion was quashed. And Rabbi Akiva, the Talmud says that he had 12,000 pairs of students, which were all killed. We don't know exactly how. Maybe in the war, maybe in the battles against the Roman Empire. But essentially the rebellion was put down by the great Roman Empire, and that happened during this time period. So the Talmud says, during this time period, we have to have some activity, the temple being destroyed, then we this terrible calamity that befell the Jewish people. And therefore, there are two things which you're not allowed to do during the Omer period. And of course, that's going to have to fight against what I was describing of mourning, which are two. Only two. People get confused. I'm not allowed. Good. So there's two things mentioned in the Talmud. One is not to cut your hair. Cutting your hair in the day, I mean, it's still a little bit festive today. So people get, it's fun when you get your hair cut and you feel fresh and you feel new. So it's sort of like a self-pampering. So we don't do that during the Omer period. That's number one, not cutting your hair. And then there's a lot of discussion. What does that mean regarding what if you shave every day? Does that call the haircut? It's not as festive. And what are the parameters? We have to talk about that. And the second thing? Marriage. Don't get married. No weddings. Traditionally, the Talmud says we're not supposed to get married in this period. Then that gets extended, just like I said, the haircutting gets extended to maybe shaving, and then so the weddings get extended to any music or dancing, anything that's like a festive party. You shouldn't have big parties during this period. So that's what a lot of people associate the Omer period with. These two customs can be expanded, and nowadays we listen to music a lot, so it could really impact you if you stop listening to music. In the day, listening to music was much more a big deal. Before there was headphones. Before there was music players of all kinds. To listen to music, you had to bring a musician, play the violin in person. It was live. Music was live music. There's no such other thing. So you could understand how that's connected to like a party, to like a wedding. You have musicians that come in. But it's become much more pervasive now because.
How strict are these rules? Because I attended wedding during these days, and I saw people who are supposed to be very orthodox have very clean beard.
Okay, so we have to talk about those rules, but essentially there's two: haircuts and weddings, and then how they get extended and how they get applied. We have to discuss. Now, some people. There was one other period in history where these customs of mourning, as I said, which are really it's not all the customs of mourning. It's just a minor commemoration. It became more serious. In Jewish tradition, the culture, especially in Ashkenazi countries in Europe, these customs of mourning were even more strict. An explanation for that is in 1649, I believe, 1650. Go back 350 years, right? They're known as it's in Ukraine, Khmelnytsky, the Ukrainian war hero. Until today, there's a bust of Khmelnytsky on a horse. He's a big hero of the Ukrainians. He basically committed what we would call today, and if you parallel the population size and how many people were killed, basically it was a Holocaust. What we call the Holocaust of the Jews in Europe, 6 million Jews killed, murdered. In the Ukraine, about 350 years ago, this was where most of the European Jewry was. They were in Russia and the Ukraine, and they were massacred. They're killed. It was unbelievable, proportional to the amount of Jews that were there. It was maybe even worse than the Holocaust. It's crazy. We don't even know about it. You guys don't even, they're called in Hebrew Gzerot Tach v'Tat, because that's the Hebrew equivalent of 1649, 1650. Or 48 and 49. So of course, and that massacre happened in this period, during the period of the Omer. And so the customs of mourning in the European Jewish communities became even stronger. Not only that, they changed them a little bit. Now the custom is, just to get to some of the bottom lines, Aaron is saying he actually attended weddings. How could that be if you're not allowed to have weddings? Well, the Talmud says that the students of Rabbi Akiva died up until pros atzeret. Half of atzeret. What does it mean? Atzeret means Shavuot. What does it mean, half of Shavuot? So most interpretations, it's not clear exactly. Most interpretations means half a month. Half a month before Shavuot, 2 weeks before Shavuot, is Lag BaOmer, or the 34th of the Omer. So, right, 49 minus 14 is 35. So some people even don't get married until the 34th day. So there are many customs that we don't actually commemorate the mourning for the entire period of the Omer, but only up until Lag BaOmer, essentially, the first half. In the Ashkenazi communities, they developed another custom, and that is we're going to do the days of commemoration, 33 days, but towards the end, because it was during this period, the ending of the Omer period, before Shavuot, that's when the massacres in the Ukraine were. And so we have an Ashkenazi custom which only starts doing the mourning customs, not cutting your hair, not having weddings, at Rosh Chodesh. So yesterday was Rosh Chodesh. So by the way, if you wanted to shave on Friday, the Ashkenazi custom is you're allowed to, because it's also Erev Shabbat, and it's Rosh Chodesh, and some people don't even start doing any commemorations of mourning until after Rosh Chodesh. Now we're in the period between now Rosh Chodesh and Lag BaOmer, which is on the 18th of Iyar. Now it's the 2nd of Iyar, so another 16 days. Pretty much everybody keeps the customs of mourning, and there's no weddings during this period. As I said, there's some leniencies around Rosh Chodesh. We're going to see that maybe there's a leniency on Yom HaAtzma'ut, and this is the other side of the coin, that there are still some commemorations of mourning during this period. How to make that fit with Yom HaAtzma'ut? Look on page 70. On page 70, it's the finishing of the discussion about the Omer, tries to give you the bottom line, and he mentions that on Friday you had according to the Ashkenazi custom, you were able to get a haircut, and then he says on the next paragraph, Yom HaAtzma'ut is a holiday of thanksgiving and rejoicing, therefore it is proper to shave in anticipation of Yom HaAtzma'ut, and one may even cut one's hair for this occasion. Getting married, however, is prohibited, although some people allow it as well. So you can see that we're going to discuss the Yom HaAtzma'ut has to override, if you're celebrating Yom HaAtzma'ut as a festival to thank Hashem, for waking up from your dream, right? To be able to see the reality of the amazing miracles that we've seen. So then, of course, you can shave. It overrides that custom of minimal mourning. Most rabbis who celebrate Yom HaAtzma'ut believe that it overrides. Of course, there is a Sephardic custom, some Hasidim do this as well, not to shave for the entire Omer, regardless of the mourning customs. It's something to do with Kabbalah. And maybe something Yosef mentioned, that this period is a period of growth, of a spiritual growth, and therefore some people have the practice not to cut their hair for the entire 49 days, or at least up until the 3 days before Shavuot. We'll speak about that as well. We have to prepare for Shavuot afterwards. So we'll get started. We'll get started with page 71, chapter 4. Questions, comments so far? Yeah.
I understand. I attended the wedding basically on Rosh Chodesh on Thursday night.
There you go. It was Rosh Chodesh.
Yeah.
There you go. It was Rosh Chodesh. Thursday night was the beginning.
Almost made Lashon Hara. Almost.
Yeah. No. In Israel, you won't find anybody getting married during this period. The Rabbanut, the marriage registrar in Israel, won't register you for marriage unless you have some rabbinic sanction for that. So Rosh Chodesh, some places they allow it because it's Rosh Chodesh. It's a little bit.
Rabbi Chenevers was there.
Amazing. Friends.
Yom HaAtzma'ut was a holiday created by the state of Israel, or it was the Rabbanut?
Good question. Very good question. So we're going to see. We're going to see how that worked. It's the short answer is both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is more about if there is something that comes from the Torah, which is that morning, comes from the Rabbi.
Well, let's get. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
If you should give preference to the Torah over the state, a state holiday, let's say, which is very important.
Of course,
It's part of the Torah.
Right.
But which one we should?
State law, you could be living in Brazil and there's a civic holiday. Okay, so you won't go to work, but you're not going to say Hallel. You're not going to.
Sure.
So we have to separate between what the state's laws are and what the halacha has to say. And the halacha is decided, of course, by rabbis.
Sure.
So of course, I just want to make sure that we understand it has many meanings. They already know what I'm going to show you, but it's always good to review. Very good instruction. That's why many times the Torah is translated as the law, right? The law. In some places they write the law because instructions is laws, tells you what it is. Of course, Torah is much more than that. It's laws. It's much more than laws. It's instruction about beliefs as well, and ideals and values. It's not only a list of laws, but that's what. And Torah also refers to, many times when we say the word Torah, we say it refers to the Chumash. Chumash. That equals
5 books. And more.
5 books. 5 books in what's that, Latin? Penta. It's 5. Right, like the Pentagon in America. It's a 5. Pentagram. That's right. That's it. It's 5 sides. So, tuch means, I think, teaching. Teaching in 5. Right. So that's sometimes we say Torah. We get to the Tanakh. Right? Torah refers to the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. The N refers to the Nevi'im, which is, of course, the prophets. And the CH is the Chronicles or Ketuvim, right? If it's a Hebrew acronym, Ketuvim. So Torah, in the T here, refers to Torah. It actually refers to only the Tanakh, only the Chumash, as part of the 3-part Bible, right? That's many times the entire Tanakh is called the Bible, right? The Bible refers to the 24 books of the Bible. That's the Jewish count. Right? We count all the 12 small minor prophets, the smaller prophets, as one. So we get to the number of 24. I'll show that to you another day. But there's another meaning of Torah, which I think Michael was using just before. What other meaning when we say, what does the Torah tell us? What is the Torah law? What is the talking about? All of Judaism, the tradition, the Jewish tradition, which includes, in other words, everything. Everything, including rabbinic Judaism, including today's customs, including the different opinions. So sometimes we just say, well, is this a Torah law? Wait a minute, Torah law, does that mean it comes from the Chumash? Can Yom HaAtzma'ut be in the Chumash? So based on the context, you have to understand, when you say, what does the Torah have to say about that? Usually, many times we just use the word Torah for Judaism, the Jewish tradition. What does the Torah have to say about that? Okay, so one more thing I want to show you, and this is the guys who are with me are quite aware of this, is that our Jewish tradition is divided up into 7 periods of Jewish history. Okay, period number 1, what's that called? Foundations. Period number 2 is the First Temple period. Period number 3 is the Second Temple period. Period number 4 is the period of the sages. Period number 5 is called the period of the Geonim. 6, Rishonim, and period number 7 is the Acharonim, if you can read that. Okay, so we 500 years each, so if we're in 2000 now, so you go back to 1500, it's the period of Acharonim. Back to 1000 to 1500, that's the period of Rishonim. From 500 to 1000, that's the period of the Geonim. From 0 to 500, that's the period of the sages. That's when the Talmud was written. Many people call that rabbinic Judaism, right? 0 to 500. And before that, of course, the Second Temple period, approximately, right? Minus 500 to 0. First Temple, minus 1000 to minus 586. Destruction, according to most people. And before that, we have, I like to call prehistory, from minus 1500 to minus 1000, the period of the forefathers, the Exodus, the conquering of the land of Israel, the Shoftim, until we get to the beginning of the First Temple, King David and Solomon, at minus 1000 approximately. Okay, so these are the 7 periods of Jewish history, which I've shown to you before. And so again, sometimes when you say, well, mourning comes from the Torah, what you meant was Jewish tradition. But really, when we think about it, where do the mourning practices start? Right? Moshe, Pesach, and Shavuot, and the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, that's way back here. So what came first? That this is a period of celebration, of joy, of 7 weeks of redemption. That's the original concept. That's why I started with that. It also fits in with the celebrations that we're going to talk about of Yom HaAtzma'ut and Yom Yerushalayim. It's true that in the period of our sages, in the Talmud, crept in this additional other side of the coin, that there's some mourning practices. And then I mentioned to you that in the last period, in the Gzerot Tachvatat, the Chmielnicki massacres, the mourning practices became even more strict and more severe, in the European communities because of what befell them during this time period. And so we have all 7 periods we just discussed today, but we're mentioning way back to the period of the foundational period during the sages, and then even closer to our time, what this time period had to, what it meant for the Jewish people throughout our 3,500 year history. Clear so far? So good? Okay, other questions? Okay, you'll be tested on this tomorrow. Everything on the board. 3 meanings of the word Torah and 7 periods of Jewish history. Okay, Hananel, you ready?
Yeah,
Very good. Let's begin chapter 4 in the book of Zmanim and see what Rabbi Melamed has to teach us about Yom HaAtzma'ut. There's also, as you can see from the title, he not only speaks about Yom HaAtzma'ut, along with Yom Yerushalayim. Those are the 2 days, the 5th of Iyar and the 28th of Iyar, together with Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaShoah. Yom HaShoah, some of you went to Yad Vashem last week. There was a school trip to the Holocaust Memorial Day, Wednesday, I believe. Yeah. And on Tuesday, even before we get to Yom HaAtzma'ut, the celebration on Wednesday, there is the day called Yom HaZikaron, which this is already more. This is more of a civic decision made, Yom HaZikaron, that we commemorate the fallen soldiers who gave their lives so that we can sit here now and study Torah. So these are, you could say, these are all the new days, the new holidays in the Jewish calendar, and we have to discuss that. Is that allowed? How is that possible? What are we talking about? That's this chapter 4. Okay. You're definitely encouraged to read ahead. We can't cover everything, but we have some time, so we're going to discuss it somewhat. Who can read for us? Please, Jordan. Start us off.
1. The mitzvah of settling Eretz Yisrael. When the state of Israel was established on the 5th year of Iyar in 5708, 1948, the Jewish people fulfilled the mitzvah of settling Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. It is true that even prior to the establishment of the state, any Jew who lived in Eretz Yisrael fulfilled this mitzvah, and the sages even said, one should always dwell in Eretz Yisrael, even in a city inhabited mostly by idolaters, and he should not dwell outside the land. Even in a city inhabited by mostly Jews, for anyone who dwells in Eretz Yisrael is like one who has a God. And anyone who dwells outside the land of Israel is like one who has no God.
Share.
Okay. However, the primary mitzvah is for the Jewish people collectively to have a sovereignty over Eretz Yisrael. The mitzvah for every Jew to dwell in Eretz Yisrael is an offshoot of the collective mitzvah that is incumbent upon the Jewish people. This is the meaning of the verse. You shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have assigned the land to you to possess. Bamidbar 33:53. You shall take possession denotes conquest and sovereignty, while and settle in it implies inhabiting the land to prevent it from being desolate. Similarly, the Torah states, you shall possess it and settle in it. Accordingly, Rambam defines the mitzvah as follows. We were commanded to take possession of the land that God may, he be exalted, gave to our fathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we must not leave it in the hands of any other nation or let it remain desolate. This mitzvah is incumbent upon the Jewish people in every generation. For a long time, however, we lacked power and were thus forced to neglect this mitzvah. We did not have a military or weapons with which to conquer and settle our land. In recent generations, God showed kindness to his people, and a national spirit began to stir. Jews went forth and assembled in Eretz Yisrael. They planted trees, developed the country's economy, organized a defense force, and resisted foreign rule. so that when the British Mandate ended, our public representatives were able to declare the establishment of the State of Israel. On that day, the Jewish people began fulfilling the mitzvah of settling Eretz Israel. While it is true that we are not yet in control of the entire Eretz Israel, and we are still somewhat dependent on the nations of the world, we likewise find that the halachot of mourning over Eretz Israel's destruction depend on Jewish sovereignty over the land. The sages enacted that one who sees the cities of Judea in ruins should recite, "Your holy cities have become a desert," and tear his garments. The Poskim explain that the definition of in ruins depends on who is in control. If non-Jews rule the land, its cities are considered ruined, even if most of the inhabitants are Jews, and one must rend his garment upon seeing them. But if Jews are in control of the cities, they are not considered ruined, even if non-Jews form the majority of their inhabitants, and one does not rend his garments upon seeing them. In addition, the sages lavish praise upon the mitzvah of settling Eretz Israel, going so far as to say that it is equal to all the mitzvot of the Torah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first, the first thing to celebrate, Rabbi Melamed explains, is that we're fulfilling a mitzvah. What mitzvah is there to establish the state of Israel?
To settle the land.
To settle the land. It's one of the mitzvot in the Torah, to settle the land. Now, the Ramban, as he quotes here, makes it clear that there is settling the land personally. Every Jew that comes and lives in the land of Israel is fulfilling the mitzvah of living in the land of Israel. But you cannot deny that there is a national element. It's not just about every individual Jew coming, but it's the fact the mitzvah in its fullest is that the collective, the Jewish people, have not only settled, just like if a Jew moves to America, he becomes an American citizen and buys a house. Okay, you're Jewish and you're American. You come to Israel, you buy a house. So you could be a Jewish citizen of, let's say, the British Mandate or the Turkish Ottoman Empire, whatever it was. That's not the true fulfillment of the mitzvah in the Torah. The mitzvah in the Torah is for the Jewish nation to conquer the land of Israel, to be sovereign in the land of Israel. Sovereignty is a mitzvah. We were not able to fulfill this mitzvah for many, many years. Jewish people didn't have really a collective body. And even that today, we don't really have a body that necessarily represents all the Jewish people. Israel's trying to, but the first time that a group of Jews could gather together and in the name of the Jewish people say, we are establishing the Jewish state and we are in control of the land of Israel, that is a fulfillment of a mitzvah in the Torah. It's a mitzvah to settle the land, and settle includes be sovereign in the land. So this is a political mitzvah. It's a mitzvah of sovereignty.
Yeah.
And that's why some people, when they go to vote, it should be every 4 years. In this country, sometimes it's twice a year. Whenever you go to vote, they dress in their finest. And so I'm going to do a mitzvah. What mitzvah to vote? It's a mitzvah to vote. It's a mitzvah to participate in having a Jewish country. And the way we decided to rule the country is some form of democracy. So that's the way it's done. The point is that the very fact that there is a Jewish country, that the Jews are now in control of the land of Israel, is a mitzvah. And the fact that we're able to do this mitzvah after many, many, many years. My teacher I mentioned before, Chaim Drukman, he made a Shechianu every year. On Yom HaAtzma'ut, he was just so happy with the sovereignty. Himself, a Holocaust survivor, who was saved 3 times from the claws of the Nazis just by a hair's breadth. And he, till his dying day, till last year, A friend of mine was there in yeshiva every year. He made his shechianu, and he said, my friend was just telling me about it yesterday. He said, there's a lot of debates about Independence Day and how much we should celebrate and be happy. He says, you just listen to Rav Drukman's shechianu, and all the questions dissolve, and you see the great appreciation there is of what it means to have a Jewish state. We're going to talk about more what it means to have a Jewish state. But on the very first level, it is a mitzvah in the Torah that the Jewish people are supposed to be in charge. They're supposed to settle the land, not only individually, but as a group. We're supposed to settle the land of Israel. And for the first time, we were able to do that for many, many, many years. When was the last time that we settled the land and had sovereignty over the land?
48?
We're talking about 1948. That's when it started.
Yeah.
Right. The 5th of Iyar, 1948. That's what we're celebrating.
Hasmoneans.
That's right. Show me on the periods. Right now we're in period 8. Right. We're already past 2000. Right. Second Temple period. How many years back is that? 2000. More than 2,000 years. Second Temple period was the last time we had a Jewish government, a form of government. The Hasmoneans. They were called the Hasmonean kings.
It lasted only 100 years.
100 years. Some people say close to 200 years. Depends how you count. The Rambam says it was close to 200 years. And, that's an amazing thing. Some people say, this whole way of looking at things is really ignoring something. First of all, they say, well, we don't have the entire state of Israel. The land of Israel is not under our control, totally. Yeah, because we don't have control over Jericho and parts of Hebron and Shem, and we don't have control over all of the land of Israel that was promised. Okay, so we can fulfill a mitzvah on part of the land. That's not a very strong argument. Then they say, wait a minute, who is in control? Who is leading the Jewish people? We expect to be sovereign. We expect, like King David and King Solomon, we want, I think you were inferring, the rabbis should be in charge. There are people that keep Torah and mitzvot that are going to make a shechianu when they establish the state, because it's a mitzvah. The people in charge of the state are not religious. Many of them they're not keeping Torah. So how can you say that they're fulfilling a mitzvah without keeping Torah? What's the counter argument to that? When's the last time we had sovereignty, which we celebrated? Second Temple period. Hasmoneans.
They're not keeping.
They were not so from. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They were, most of them, many of them were tzeddokim. They followed the tradition of tzedok, who denied the oral law. Yeah. There was corruption. There was infighting. And there were even one of the Hasmonean kings, which we celebrate as being sovereign. The last time we had sovereignty in the Second Temple period, one of them name was Alexander Yanai, influenced by the Greeks, and he killed, massacred all of the rabbis, all the rabbinic leadership, except for one, his brother-in-law, Shimon ben Shetach, survived. And yet, the Rambam says, on Hanukkah we celebrate. One of the things we celebrate on Hanukkah was that, of course, we lit the candles, right? The Greeks tried to defile the temple. They did defile the temple, and we purified it. The Rambam says we also celebrate that we had Jewish sovereignty for more than 200 years. You're right, it's hard to count that way, but the point is, he says we have to celebrate. There is Jewish sovereignty. Even though these Jews were not all the holiest tzaddikim in the world. And so even today, today there are many, many tzaddikim. We'll talk about this, how there's a new app. You could find it. There's a new app, and it measures how much a tzaddik you are. Right? And so if you use the new app, you could tell who's the righteous one and who's the not righteous one. But either way, There's a collective of Jews who, in the name of the Jewish people, saying we are establishing a Jewish state for the first time in 2,000 years. This is a mitzvah. And that's really the first thing that we're celebrating on Yom HaAtzma'ut. Questions, comments, complaints? Leave them outside. Okay.
So the real sovereignty was actually only during David, during the Melech, right?
It's also
The
short.
real
David and
the
Solomon.
ultimate
David and
sovereignty.
Solomon. Also some of the other kings afterwards. The king
They lost the northern kingdom of Israel.
Yoachaz. They had tremendous power. Their empire was very large, even though they were not great tzaddikim.
Yeah.
They were not. They were also worshiping idols, and yet we consider that to be sovereignty of the Jewish kings, the Judean kings. So.
But it's only a tiny part of the line of Israel.
Also, exactly. So whatever part you get. You know, we try to make it more. We'll see what happens in history. So far, it's been getting bigger and smaller, bigger and smaller, bigger and smaller.
Mashiach will complete the...
Maybe Mashiach will finish it up. That's right. But
Never ideal.
Why we need a competition to know who's the best tzaddik?
That's right. But we're all Jews. We all try to do the mitzvot. And the collective. There are mitzvot which can only be accomplished by the collective Israel, the nation of Israel. For example, there are wars that the Jewish people have to wage. You might have heard of Amalek. Right? We have to fight a war against Amalek. How are we supposed to do that? As each individual? Perhaps also. But simple reading is, there are mitzvot which we have to do as a collective. A national mitzvah. A natural mitzvah of achieving sovereignty over the land of Israel is what we're celebrating on Yom HaAtzma'ut. So that's issue number one. The very fact that we declared an independent state is something that it's fulfillment of a mitzvah which we have to celebrate. Now the truth is, many people argue and say, okay, let's say you have to, we're going to continue on page 74 now. There's other miracles. There's so many miracles. Okay, you could say that there was a war and we were saved and we were victorious over enemies. We have to celebrate that we were saved, our lives were saved. It didn't happen on the 5th of Iyar. The war started, you could say, on the 5th of Iyar. It started earlier, really. But what's special about the 5th of Iyar? It was this, number one, idea, that it's the day that we declared sovereignty after so many years. Jewish people are not just supposed to put on tefillin and keep Shabbat, which is quite a lot. Not speak Lashon Hara. There's so many tasks that we have to be a good Jew, right? Yeah. To be kind, to love each other. How many mitzvot are there? We put on tzitzit every day. There's so many mitzvot that we have to do. But there is a bigger picture mitzvah, and that is that the Jewish nation should be sovereign in the land of Israel. And that's what happened on the 5th of Iyar after 2,000 years, in 1948.
So to speak, live oneg.
Say again?
So to speak, live oneg instead of nega.
Ah, nice. Oneg instead of nega. That's right. Same letters. Very good.
Exactly. You know why? The oneg, it's starting with an I. Nega, it's ending with the I. Why in oneg we have the I in the first place? It's the I. It's the question how we look for each other, how we look to the situation.
Beautiful, nice. Oneg means delight,
exactly.
Right? Enjoyment, right? So sometimes, in order to appreciate, to celebrate, to delight in something, you have to have a good eye. That's what we've been trying to do now with the state of Israel, with all of its lackings. The state of Israel has a lot of fixing to do, especially when they take too much taxes from me. And especially when they annoy me in the bureaucracy. There's a lot of things that need fixing. But seriously, there's a lot of things that need fixing. How they run the country is not run the way I would have run it if I was the prime minister. But I didn't get elected. What can I do?
Still have time.
Still have time. Maybe one day. No. I thought you liked me.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a worse job than being the prime minister of Israel.
It's the worst.
The Rabbi said he has to fight with like 100 Knesset members.
Right. So I think.
Something like
Well,
that.
if you're prime minister,
I don't
the
remember
majority of
exactly.
Knesset members are probably in your party, which means they support you.
I think I forget which one of the prime ministers said to the president of the United States once, and he said to him, "Congratulations, you must be feeling really happy that you're prime minister of Israel." And he said to this fellow, "Listen, you are the president, and you have 300 million citizens. How many citizens are in
380,
America?
I think.
380 million citizens, and you're the president. I can understand you that's it's quite an honor, and it's quite a special role to play. I am prime minister of 3 million, not 380 million. Only at the time, I think it was 3 million, but I'm the prime minister of 3 million prime ministers.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks that they're the prime minister themselves. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody knows exactly how the country should be run, and it's fine. Everybody wants to be the leader. So it's a hard thing to be prime minister. So I don't know if I'd ever want to.
is inside.
Yeah.
You, in the beginning, you talked about daydreaming.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know if I want the job, but anyways, things could be run better. Sure, of course, a lot better, and they will. B'ezrat Hashem, the more people come to Israel and they vote in the right way, we can make it change. We can make a difference. But even when it's imperfect, it's still Jewish country with Jews, the majority of Jews, and they're sovereign over the land of Israel. That's a mitzvah. So we have to celebrate that. That's number one. Okay, let's move on to number two. Who's going to read for us number two? Yeah, Yosef, go ahead, please.
The beginning of the redemption and
Page 74, top of page 74.
and sanctifying Hashem's name. The establishment of the state of Israel removed the disgrace of exile from the Jewish people. Generation after generation, we wandered in exile, suffering, dreadful humiliation, pillaging, did I pronounce it?
Pillaging.
And bloodshed. We are an object of scorn and derision among the nations. We were regarded as sheep led to the slaughter, to be killed, destroyed, beaten, and humiliated. Strangers said to us, "You have no hope or expectation." That the situation was terrible, Chilul Hashem. The separation of Hashem's name. Because Hashem's name is associated with us, and when we are degraded, His name becomes desecrated among the nations. The prophets of Israel prophesied in Hashem's name that the exile will eventually end. I will take you from among the nations and gather you from all the countries.
Okay, stop there for a second, please. I want to elaborate on that just a little bit. When I was growing up, I grew up in a religious neighborhood, religious family, religious education, and I went to grade school, and they were trying to teach me to keep the mitzvot and to be a good Jew, and I lived in Canada. And they told me, for example, you have to be polite to people. You get on the bus, boys can be rowdy, right? And you get on it was the TTC, Toronto Transit Commission, and you know what I'm talking about, Jan? And we wore little yarmulkes. We looked like Jewish kids, and so if we were going to be pushing people or being too rowdy, or not giving up our seat if somebody needed a seat, then they'd say, "Don't make a chilul Hashem. Don't make a chilul Hashem." It means a desecration of God's name. People are going to look at you and say, he's a Jew, and I see that he acts not in the proper way, so that's causing a desecration of God's name. And it's true. It's true. Whenever we act improperly, it desecrates God's name. It's because we bear the name of God. We represent God. Right? Temei dai, it says in Isaiah, "You are my witnesses." So the Jewish people are somehow intrinsically connected to God. So if we do bad things, it's desecrating God's name. Not only looks bad on us, it looks bad on him. Now, if you open up the book of Yechezkel, and for your homework, I'd like you to do that. Read Yechezkel 36, 37. If you have time, read 38 as well. But primarily, Yechezkel 36. And 37 will be helpful for tomorrow. It's unbelievable. The prophet Yechezkel didn't go to my grade school. He had a different definition of what it means to desecrate God's name. It's black on white. The prophet Yechezkel says, he tells us what it means. How can we, the Jewish people, desecrate God's name? Anybody? What does Yechezkel say?
By committing Chilul Hashem.
Yeah, how do we commit Chilul? What is it? What's the example? What's the example? What is the desecration of God's name?
Living outside Israel.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, you read the book before?
I watched
Watch the movie.
No, the Shira Rabbi Menachem, and he was explaining a little bit about
Oh,
this.
lovely.
But not this book, something similar.
Ah, okay, yeah.
What was the answer?
The answer was, and it still is, if you read it inside, in the book of Yechezkel, this is black and white. It says, you know what causes a desecration of God's name? When my people, right, as we said, Jewish people represent God in the world. Everybody knows, okay, the God of the Hebrews, the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. When people look and they see the Jewish nation, the Jewish people, in exile. They were kicked out of their land. That, in itself, is a desecration of God's name. That's what the prophet says. When they see that, if it's my nation, they just should be successful. They should be in their land. They should have a sovereign country, just like every other country, just like other nation.
A lot of Nobel Prizes like that.
It doesn't say that. It says what desecrates my name is if my people are in exile. The Jewish people are not in the land of Israel. That's a desecration.
The anti-Semitic Christians will claim Hashem abandoned Jewish people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's become a theological point of a replacement theology. That's right. Well, if the Jewish people, if they're God's people, and they are downtrodden, object of scorn and derision, if they're not in their land, they are not successful. Looks bad. Looks bad on Hashem. That's what's called desecration. His name means his representation in the world. How he's known. You're known by your name. What's your name? Jordan. So I know you by your name. Your name is how you appear, how you present yourself to the world. So how does God appear in the world if his nation is exiled, doesn't have its own country, it's ridiculed, it's slaughtered and beaten? And we just said we commemorate Holocaust Day more than any other period in history, perhaps. The Jewish people were really degraded and derided. As he says here, regarded as sheep to the slaughter, to be killed, destroyed, beaten, and humiliated. So that is, and he quotes it here on page 74, in Yechezkel 36, people said, you have no hope or expectation. That situation was a terrible Chilul Hashem. Desecrations of God's name with the Jewish people have no hope. That's why it's true. The author of the Israeli national anthem, you're going to be hearing it a lot on Independence Day and on Memorial Day. How does, what's it called? What's the name of the Jewish national anthem? HaTikva, which means? The hope. The primary line is, Od lo avda tikvateinu. Our hope is not lost. The author, Naftali Hertz, Imber was his name, the author of this little poem, which it was chosen as the national anthem. It's a reference to Yechezkel 36. There, the people were in exile. They have no hope. The Jewish people said to themselves, we have abandoned all hope or expectation. What does the Jewish national anthem of the state of Israel say? Our hope is not lost. We do not despair. It's the exact opposite of a Chilul Hashem. The Chilul Hashem is when the Jewish people are in exile, have no hope. Come back to the land of Israel. The national anthem is hope. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem which describes the opposite of Chilul Hashem is Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem. Sanctification of God's name. So the very fact that the Jewish people are not in exile anymore, well, almost most of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, there's still some Jews in exile.
So all the Jews who don't make Aliyah are committing Chilul Hashem?
Yeah.
Ouch! Ouch!
On some level.
Yes, on some level there's truth to what you're saying. Of course, I don't want to be so judgmental because, I myself lived outside the land of Israel for many years. Sometimes you're forced to, sometimes you can't have. But yeah, that's what Yechezkel says. Yechezkel says the fact that the Jews are in exile is a Chilul Hashem. Every Jew wants to make a Kiddush Hashem. Forget about being nice on the bus. He should make Aliyah. The Jews should be living in the land of Israel. That is what makes a Kiddush Hashem. There is more. In the land of Israel as well. If you don't keep the mitzvot, if you don't live a holy lifestyle, there's other elements of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem as well. But you can't deny what Yechezkel 36 says. Yechezkel, the definition in Yechezkel is very clear. The primary definition of sanctifying God's name or desecrating His name is whether the Jews are in exile or in the land of Israel. So you could say that today, if the majority of Jews are not here yet, we haven't really succeeded. Or not. Now we have to understand, why is it so important? We said that Israel represents God, and their success represents God's success. God is supposed to be all-powerful. If His nation is in the dumps, it doesn't reflect too well on God. And so that's the simple explanation of why Yechezkel 36 says that, when we're back in our nation and we're successful, so that's a Kiddush Hashem. What a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. So that's element number 2. What are we celebrating on Yom HaAtzma'ut? That important?
Because
first thing we said up till now, we said section 1 was it's a mitzvah to be independent, to be sovereign over the land of Israel. Second issue now is just saying we're celebrating Kiddush Hashem.
Yeah.
The very fact that we come back to our land from the exile, we live in the land of Israel, is a Kiddush Hashem, based on Yechezkel 36.
Yeah.
Something to celebrate, no? Making a Kiddush Hashem. For years and years and years, you know what the word Kiddush Hashem meant in Jewish history? It meant martyrdom, being killed out of dedication to your God. You convert to Christianity, or you'll be crucified. You'll be killed at the stake for many, many years. Unfortunately, Crusader times and beyond. Jewish people were put to the test of faith. And those Jews who heroically were able to survive, to stand the test, they declared their faith in God. And we say that they did a Kiddush Hashem. They sanctified the name of God by dying al Kiddush Hashem. But you don't have to die to make a Kiddush Hashem. You can live and make a Kiddush Hashem. Yeah. How do you live and sanctify God's name? I understand if you say, I'm not willing to deny God, to be a heretic, and so you're sanctifying God's name, you're showing your trust, your faith in God, your dedication. But how do you do that when you're living? So, many ways. You keep God's mitzvot. You live an upstanding lifestyle. You sanctify God's name. You say every day in your tefillot, Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvakot, Melech Haaretz Kodo, right? We sanctify God's name in our mouths. Yechezkel 36 is teaching us There's another way that we sanctify God's name. Returning from the exile. The Jewish people living in the state of Israel is a sanctification of God's name.
And Hilul Hashem is the worst sin, right? It's the sin.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
That's
the worst
right.
sin.
That's right. It's a terrible sin, and therefore a great mitzvah. The opposite, the Kiddush Hashem, is a great mitzvah. So I'd rather live to sanctify God's name than to die al Kiddush Hashem. But sometimes we're not given. None of them really chose to die. They wanted to the other guy should die, right? Right? That's rather than die for the sake of your God, it's better to make the enemy that's facing you die for their God. We want to live. We want to live to sanctify God's name, but sometimes we're not given the choice. And the truth is, these soldiers gave their lives for the sake of the Jewish people to be sovereign in the land of Israel, to be safe in the land of Israel. They gave their lives for the sake of Hashem. We say about them too. Even though it wasn't a question of convert, commit heresy, worship an idol, or die, it was dying for the sake of the Jewish people. And that's called dying al Kiddush Hashem, for the sanctification of God's name. So, what did I say before? The app that measures how much you're a tzaddik. The app, it's so hard because you could have somebody who doesn't keep Shabbat his whole life. He even eats pork. He even, I don't know, maybe he spoke Lashon Hara. Whoa, maybe he even didn't keep the laws of family purity with his wife. Maybe even committed other sins. I don't want to called up to reserve duty. He came to fight for has a greater weight than the other one. Which sins are greater? Or I can't measure that. The app doesn't exist. That was a joke, okay? It's too hard. Only one person has the app.
Yeah.
Only Hashem knows how to judge people. And so we say that they died al Kiddush Hashem. They made a tremendous sanctification of God's name to fight for their fellow Jews, to fight for the land of Israel, to fight for the mitzvah of having a Jewish state in the land of Israel. And so there's tremendous merits. And today too, not only the people that died, the people that are alive. We said before, who's running the country? Oh, they don't have peot. They don't study in Kollel. Maybe they don't even wear a kippah. Oh, what a terrible, terrible desecration of God's name. There's some truth to that. But there's also these same people leading the country are doing a sanctification of God's name. Because they're creating a Jewish state in the land of Israel. Yechezkel 36 says this is sanctified in God's name. So it's very hard to judge what is larger, what is smaller. I'll conclude with this for today. There's a teaching by Rav Tzvi Yehuda Cohen Cook, who quotes the Gemara in the Yerushalmi. He says there, the Talmud says, it's a long story. We won't get into the entire story now. The verses speak about how the people of Yavesh Gil'ad, they wanted to string up the children of Shaul. Shaul was the first king of the Jews, and he was not very nice to them. He didn't treat them nicely. Even though they were converts, he didn't treat them nicely. And they were very angry at him. And afterwards, after a while, when King David is in charge, King Shaul was killed already, and he wanted to make peace, he wanted to solidify his kingdom, and he heard that the people of Yavesh Gilad were very upset. So he asked them, what can I do to appease you? And they said, let us string up the remnants of the house of Shaul. There were a few relatives left, and they killed them, and they hung them. Now it's against the Torah to hang somebody overnight. You can't. They left them hanging for months. Sounds like almost, it's not exactly clear how long it was. Very, very long time. And there was even a beautiful tzaddiket, a woman who saved them from the vultures, from attacking the bodies. Bottom line is, why did King David say yes? Why did he allow them? Isn't that a desecration of God's name? To go against the rules of the Torah, to leave this bodies hanging, of the king of Israel no less. It's a desecration of God's name. The Talmud says, his calculation was like this. The Kiddush Hashem is greater than the Chilul Hashem. Gadol Kiddush Hashem. The Kiddush Hashem was that people have to realize you have to be nice to converts. Don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that you can not behave properly with the converts. And that's what the corrective which was being done here. And it's true, there's a Chilul Hashem. These bodies were hung for a long time as improper. But to accomplish the greater Kiddush Hashem, that overrid that the Chilul Hashem. Gadol Kiddush Hashem, Chilul Hashem. So perhaps that's a little bit of a directive for us as well. When we try to analyze and think, how do we understand these events of our modern time? They're so confusing, they're so complicated, there's so many different ways of looking at it. On the one hand, there is a Kiddush Hashem, Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. People giving their lives, martyrdom, for the sake of their brethren, for the sake of the Jewish people. That's a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. On the other hand, maybe there is Chilul Hashem in some of the behaviors, the practices. There's many aspects to speak about the Chilul Hashem. But Rav Tzvi HaKohen Cook taught us Gadol Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. Based on the precedent of King David, the Talmud says in Yerushalmi that this was his calculation. The sanctification is greater than the desecration. And going back to Yechezkel 36, we'll pick up here tomorrow on page 75. There's more to be said here, but I wanted to stop you to make sure you appreciate. I want you all to read Yechezkel 36. You see, I'm not making it up. That's the definition of sanctification of God's name. That the Jewish people return from the exile. That is sanctification of God's name, as opposed to the exile being defined as the desecration. Of course, there's other elements. There's still things that need fixing, which are still desecrating God's name in the state of Israel. But there's also tremendous sanctification of God's name. And from our perspective, this should be something that's celebrated. And while we continue to try to fix, we try to make sure that the sanctification continues and the desecrations will become more and more minimal, less and less as time goes on, together with your efforts to help us. So we'll stop here for today. B'ezras Hashem will continue. If you have the book at home, those of you who bought the set, bring them in because we don't have enough to go around. It'll be more convenient for everybody to hold their own copy. And we'll continue to prepare for Yom HaAtzma'ut, B'ezras Hashem, tomorrow morning. Okay?